Alright, troubleshooting a diesel locomotive. Northfolk Southern Locomotive Engineer Training Handbook. Troubleshooting a diesel locomotive. Objective. The objective of this learning is to acquaint the training with the potential malfunctions on a locomotive which may be within the scope of his or her responsibility when he or she becomes an engineer. As a result of the discussion, potential system with the corrective procedures with the conclusion of the locomotive or the lesson of the training will familiar with the common malfunctions with the locomotive unit will line up with the road will convert observation will the most of the common trouble the recommended for the corrective actions. The training will be completed with the troubleshooting chart, which he or she will be able to use with a reference for the following training. The training will complete the examination, will sample his or her understanding with the locomotive malfunctions and score at least 80%. In any machinery which are moved to stationary, the malfunction would occur with the locomotives have no exemption when the malfunction do occur with the line of the road. There are some of the things that the engineer can do to correct the problem. The lessons we will discuss for these problems, what you can do overcome them. The chart you will cover the topics we'll discuss during this lesson. We will fill it out when we discuss each topic. Alright, protection device for the diesel engine. Engine overspeed trip of the RPM. The device protects the engine from the overspeeding and shuts it down. The location of the description of the electric motive diesel locomotive units with the governor of the overspeed trip is located on the governor end of the diesel engine is leveled about 10 inches long. During the normal operation of the reset lever is positioned at 11 o'clock. When tripped, it will be coming at 1 o'clock. The electric motive division 70 SD70 and Mac 80 type of the locomotives electric motive diesel electronic control system incorporates the diesel engine overspeed function and eliminates the need for the traditional mechanical overspeed with the device. Electric motor diesel electric control overspeed function reduces the amount of fuel going on to the engine, but does not shut it down. Electric motor diesel electronic control returns the fuel injection to normal level when the engine speed has dropped to normal. An older General Electric locomotive, the overspeed trip is located on the edge of the engine governor. It will reset with a button if the trip withdrew only an eighth of an inch. The C39-8 locomotive unit is the lay shaft located on the governor end, which may be used with the starting of the pushing, which also set the overspeed tripping of the pulling a lay shaft handle out at the full travel, the holding it for 3 seconds on the dash 8-9 and dash 8. The overspeed is reset through the depart data in DID panel. 3. The reason for tripping. The engine overspeed trips at any time the diesel engine reaches the dangerous speed with the RPM usually 10 to 15% above the full speed load. But some of these things that make it a trip are electric load on the alternator, any unit suddenly dropped or stuck on the fuel injectors during the transition and changes. Diesel engine shuts down when the overspeed trip. The overspeed trip, the diesel engine will shut down except for the SG70 with the Mac of the 80s with the alarm receiver with the bell ring on each of the unit with the no power light unit with the overspeed trip. The electric motor division and turbocharged locomotive units will also receive the white trip turbo loop pump light. 4. To restart the engine. 2. Restart the engine of the electric motor diesel unit. To play for the isolation switch in the isolation position. This eliminates the no power light with the bell and reset the overspeed trip by moving the lever to counterclockwise to the 11 o'clock position until it latches. Then restart the engine in the conventional manual. The turbo loop, the pump light will remain on until it times out. To restart the engine, the G units play for the engine control switch, and this equivalent to the isolation switch for the electric motor diesel units for the start position. This eliminates the bell or no power light. Resets the overspeed tripping by shoving it on the reset button, pulling on the lay shaft, and holding 3 seconds. Resting in the DID panel on some of the dash 8 and all dash 9 locomotive. The restarting the engine is conventional manual. No, either type of the engine needs to trip or overspeed protection device. Limit operation on the locomotive to the 7th notch. Engine cannot be restarted with the overspeed trip. The electric motor diesel and unit cannot be started with the overspeed trip. The overspeed trip acts of the position of the injectors, the nil fuel position. The engine could be rotated, but would never start with the engine. Will start with the overspeed trip. The General Electric unit will start while holding in the lay shaft, but will die when the lay shaft is released. The oil shutdown device. The device shuts the engine down in the case of the low lube oil pressure, high lube oil suction pressure by other safety feature tripping. Location description. Electric motor diesel unit of the locomotive oil device is a small plunger on the front of the governor with a trip of the red ring will show on the plunger. The SD70 Mac 80 unit of the electric motor diesel engine control electric control panel has the red indicator light. The light will lube the oil pressure has become dangerously low. After checking the lube oil level, the electric motor diesel electric control panel must be reset. On the GE-7 locomotive unit, the governor shut down the relay with the reset button located in the electrical cabinet within the room adjacent with the crew cab with the C39-8 and locomotive unit with the low oil relay will reset automatically. GE-8 and 9. The units can be reset with a DID panel on the engine control panel in the cab. 7. Reason for tripping. The device trips anytime the lube oil pressure becomes low or due to the lube oil diluted with fuel oil and water, hot oil, lube, or clogged lube filters. Engine shutdowns when low oil device trips. When the electric motor diesel or GE locomotive units when the low oil device trips, the diesel engine shuts down. The alarm bell will ring out on each unit. It consists no power governor shutdown lights will light on the unit with a low oil device trip. On the electric motor device locomotive unit with the turbocharger, you will also receive the turbo pump light. To restart the engine, it's important to remember that anytime the low lube oil device trips on the engine, you must check the oil level in the crankcase before attempting to restart the engine. To restart the electric motor diesel locomotive, to place the isolation switch in the isolate position, that turns off the number power light and the bell. The governor shut down with the light with a burn until they shove it in. One of the reset buttons of the front governor of devices that may be required to reset would be the low water button of the crankcase. Overpressure with the button located below the manual blade shaft lever. And then restart the engine with the conventional manner with the turbo pump, lube pump light, and burn out until time. To restart on the GE locomotive units, place the engine control switch in the start position. Eliminates the no power light and bell. The governor shutdown light will continue to burn until the low oil shutdown device is reset. On the -7 type locomotives, you will have to press the governor shutdown reset tab located in the electrical cabinet. The cabinet is adjacent to the crew cab. The C39-8 locomotives use the low oil relay will be reset automatically on the GE-8 and 9 locomotive units, so they can be reset from the DID panel on the engine control panel. Alright, 9 engines cannot be restarted with the low oil device trip. When the electric motor diesel GE locomotive unit, the engine cannot be started with the low oil with the device trip. The locomotive units only have the start switch located in the engine room. The engine could be restarted and pushing on the lay shaft, but would immediately shut down the engine with the lay shaft is released. Low water device. Shut down the engine when cooling water falls below the safe level. Location and description on the electric motor diesel unit for the lower water device is located on the governor end of the engine, just over the right and below the governor and the engine protector relay. This is a reset button that protrudes the display with the red ring. Will be when tripped. The reset button could be either top or the bottom. In the housing, some of the GE units have the governor holding relays, and the high voltage cabinet can be reset with a computer. The GE-7 unit resets the low water located with the electrical cabinet adjacent to the crew cab. You must press the reset tab on the relay marked hot engine due to low water level. This relay marked with the label low water pressure or low water LWP. On G-8 and 9 locomotive units to reset with the DID panel on the engine control panel in the cab. R11 engine shuts down when the low water device trips. On the electric motor diesel unit, the cooling water becomes dangerously low. The low water device trips. Based on the position of the EPR relay is labeled on the low water. When it trips, the shows the red ring. This causes low oil switch on the governor to trip. The cause of the engine shut down. The alarm received in the bell on each of the units consists of blue light, yellow governor shut down light on the unit affected. On the electric motor diesel units, the locomotive unit is turbocharged. You will also receive the turbo light, lube pump light. General electric locomotive when the cooling water becomes dangerously low, the low water device trips and shuts the engine down. The alarm received on the bell at each of the unit, and because there's no power light and a governor shutdown light on the unit and shut down. 12. Both types of locomotive units are use the governor shutdown. 2 low water devices on both GEM and electric motor division locomotives use the low oil switch on the governor if equipped to shut down the engine. Alright, to restart the engine, check the water level. If there's sufficient water, continue to use the unit. If the water is low, leave the engine shut down until the water can be added. To restart the engine, electric motor diesel unit, replace the isolation switch in the isolate position. Eliminates the no power light and bell. Resets the low water device by shoving on the reset button. The portion of the red ring should no longer be shown. To reset the low oil switch on the governor, then the governor shutdown light will go out and the engine can be started with the usual manual. To restart the engine, the GE locomotives place the engine control switch and then starting with the position eliminates no power light bell. To reset the lower water device, reset the governor shutdown relay, reset the computer, then start the engine in a usual manner. Engine protective relay. The device's electric motor division contains the low water detector and the crankcase protector reset buttons. That either the button pops out, the low oil water switch on the governor will also trip the engine, will shut down. The SG70, the Mac 80, the units that only have the crankcase overpressure button and do have no low water button. If the locomotive runs low on the water with the electric motor diesel engine control panel, will need to the reset with the electric motive device. Electric control panel turn the start with the switch to primarily monitor as SD70 unit with the Mac 80 units and move the fuel injection toggle switch from the engine control panel to stop reset button position. 14. Crankcase protector. For the locomotive experience with the crankcase explosion, two things are required. First, there is the need for the accumulation of the combustible gases in the crankcase. This could occur with the four vapors that come off of the hot loop of the oil diesel fuel with the leaked into the oil that covers the vapors. Second, there needs to be means with the ignition that igniting them. This could be caused by a hot bearing, cracked piston, excessive piston ring blow by. Anytime the device needs to be reset, you must take all the safety precautions and have the unit isolated. Alright, on the electric motor division, the locomotive unit for the crankcase protector is located on the governor end of the engine, just under the wave shaft of the engine protector relay, along with the low water device. When this device trips, the reset button protrudes the displayed red ring. This resets the button. It could either be top or the bottom of the bottom in the housing. On the GE locomotive view, the EPR or crankcase protector is located on the right side of the engine of the main generator. It's around housing the reset plunger of the red light near the top of the device. Of the light, the device is tripped. The GE-8 and 9 unit indication of the light indicates engine the crankcase over the pressure will be displayed on the reset of the DID panel in the locomotive cab. Alright, 15. Engine shuts down when crankcase protector of the trip. The engine electric motor division model locomotive unit, something wrong internally with the crankcase protector of the trip. The reset with the button, the EPR, the release of the cut the low oil device for the governor to trip and shut the engine down. With the alarm received on the bell, all units for the consider for the no power light with the governor shutdown light on the units to shut down. On turbo equipped, the electric motor division locomotive units will receive the white turbo light and lube pump light. On the GE locomotive units, with something is wrong internally with the crankcase protector trip, the red light show for the EPR on the EPR engine shutdown. Alarm received on the bell each of the unit with consists of no power light with the engine shut down on the newer locomotive until the crankcase pressure light units of crankcase pressure light on the GE-8 and 9 locomotives default will display on the DID panel. Alright, to restart the engine, never attempt to restart an engine with a crankcase pressure detector that has shut down until you inspected the engine. To restart the engine, the electric motor division locomotive units replace the isolation switch. The isolate position eliminates the bell no power light with reset the plunger at the EPR. Reset the oil plunger for the governor. The governor shutdown light will go out. The restart the engine in usual manner. The SG70 Mac 80 type of locomotives, you will have also reset the electric motor diesel engine electric control panel, turning on the switch start switch to prime position on the SG70, moving the fuel injection toggle switch to reset the Mac 80, and the fuel injection reset is found on the engine control panel position. Or your crankcase protector. To reset the engine with the general locomotive unit, to place the engine control switch in the start position, eliminate no power light and bell. The engine control EPR push the reset plunger. Red light will go out down the dash 8 and 9. The DID panel locomotive cab will display the fault indication. And here's where the reset also indicated located. Restart the engine in the usual manner. Anytime the crankcase pressure detector on any type of locomotive unit trips or shuts the engine down, inspect the engine for obvious reason for the shutdown. If none are found, restart the engine. Listen for the unusual sounds. Look for excessive smoke or oil leaks. If nothing is found, place the engine back online. If the crankcase pressure detector trips the second time, do not attempt to reset it. Leave the engine shut down with the isolation switch in the isolation position. 17. Your hot engine alarm. When the warms the engine, cooling water temperature for this reaches the unsafe level of the normal operation temperature. Northfolk Southern diesel engine is usually about 170 to 185 degrees. Alarms received. When the engine runs out, the alarm bell sounds on all the units that consist of the hot and engine light, with the usually red lights of the unit with the running hot. Will reduce the power of some locomotive units on most electric motor division diesel locomotive units. And running the number 8 throttle in the hot engine alarm sound, but the power is automatically cut back to now 6 throttle. And operating the number 7 throttle, the power is cut back to number 5 throttle. There's no power reduction below number 6 throttle. 20. Checking cooling fans and shutters on electric motor diesel locomotive units. The cooling the water circulates at all times through the engine and at radiators. The water is cooled with the AC motor driven fan shutters, which are operated automatically thermal switches. When the engine runs hot, and check that all the cooling fans are working but the shutters are open. The shutters can be operated manually by operating an air valve located near the water glass. Checking the cooling fans and shutter. Continue general electric locomotive using only circulated water through the radiator when cooling is needed. The cooling fans are rotated with the diesel engine turning continuous except for some later model engines. On all Dash 8 and 9, which are operated by eddy current clutches and electric motors. There are no shutters. The only way to silence alarms is to reset the hot engine is to let it cool. 22 protection devices with electrical system. 22 circuit breakers. Most locomotive electrical circuits are protected with the circuit breakers. In addition to being able to turn off the circuit off and on, the breakers are also protect the device against overloads and short circuits. When a brake trips, it will be neither off or on. It will be in neither the off or the on position. It will be between the two. The reset breakers shove it all the way to the off position, then on, and it may be necessary to wait a few seconds on the breaker to cool before it can be reset. Alright, fuses. Fuses also protect circuits against overloads and short circuits. The fuses circuit cannot be usually given an indication if they are bad. If fuses in the circuit is suspected to be bad, it must be tested and replaced if necessary. A fuse test device is located in the fuse breaker panel. It consists of the fuse test block, test light, and test light switch. To test the fuse, remove it from the fuse holder, turn in the test light to make sure the bulb is good. Then the test light switch off the place the metal ends of the fuse over the test block. The test light comes in the fuse is good. Very few fuses are found on the newer model locomotive units. Ground relay protection and high voltage circuits. High voltage circuits consist of the traction alternator, main generator, traction motor, heavy duty contact with associated wiring, which make the break of the circuits. Current voltage in the high voltage circuit is greater than virtually impossibility with the protect with the breaker fuse. So we use the ground relay device for the protection with the traction alternator, main generator, traction motor, heavy duty contact with associated wiring when it's against the high voltage groundings. Engine speed returns to idle when the generator is unloaded. The ground relay trip with the locomotive unit with the diesel engine speed with the RPM given for the idle and generator unloaded with some of the locomotive units with the manual reset with the button with the ground relay. Others have automatic reset. The alarm received in the bell on each unit with the consist of the ground relay light on the locomotive unit effect. Alright, 25 to reset the ground relay. After equipped the push with the ground relay reset button located either on the engine control panel with the engine control stand. Reset the circuit with the train line with the most locomotive units and not necessary to isolate the locomotive unit in order to reset the ground relay. The ground relay must not be reset more than 2 times in 30-minute period. On the locomotive unit with the automatic ground relay reset, they only reset 2 times, after which it must be reset by the mechanical department. 26. Ground relay trips continuous. If equipped with the manual reset and the ground relay trips continuously, the only action that the engineer can take is to cut out the ground traction motor and pair of motors. If the cutting out of the traction motor does not clear the ground, the locomotive unit must be isolated. If in the application rule L2 locomotive 227 and from the Northfolk Southern 1 rules of equipment operation handling on the Northfolk Southern Railway, the locomotive units equipped with the traction motor cutouts of the locomotive unit needed not to be isolated with the ground relay trip 2 additional times after each traction motor cutout position has been tried. Installation limited relay. This is found early when the GP38, GP40, SD40 locomotive units that protect the field of the main generator except for the high excitation current. Unloads the generator. The excitation limited relay trip for the locomotive. The generator unloads the engine and speed is not affected. It remains whatever speed of the RPM of the throttle calls for. The alarm received on the bell. All units in the consist and the excitation light is on in the unit affected. 28. To reset. There is no reset button. The excitation limited relay. The engine speed must be brought to the idle before a relay to the reset. The recommended procedure for this place is the isolation switch to isolate, then back to run, then to reduce the throttle to the idle, then slowly back to the position desired. No AC voltage alternator failure. On electric motor diesel with the companion alternator, give the AC current with the run of the AC with the motors with the water cooling fan with the rectified is provided with the DC power for exciting the field with the main generator and the traction motor. Alternator failure. Alternator failure causes the engine speed RPM to go on idle with the main generator or with the traction motor to unload the alarm received in the bell on all units that consist and no power light on the unit affected. This is the same no power light reach each of the time the engine shuts down with the isolation switch in the running position. Alright, fuses and breaker that cause alternator failure. The cause of the alternator failure on older units with the auxiliary generator field 30 amp, the auxiliary generator output fuse 150 amp, the companion alternator field fuse 60 amp will cause the alternator failure, no power, light, and bell. On GP38 DC, there are two 50 amp generators field fuse to protect the main traction generator that will not cover the alternator failure, but if it's bad, the locomotive will not load. On the electric motor diesel dash 2 model of the alternator failure, the bell, no power, light will be covered with the AC control circuit of the breaker at the 15 amps, auxiliary generator field circuit breaker at 6 amps, auxiliary generator output circuit breaker at 100 amps, the traction alternator field circuit breaker at 100 amps. AC control circuit breaker will be found on the Dash 2 locomotive units. Some earlier Dash 2 the GP38 had fused instead of the circuit breaker on the auxiliary generator field, auxiliary generator output, traction alternator field. The traction alternator fuse of the breaker will use to be labeled in the generator field. Your wheel slip system acts on unload with the partially unload of the locomotive, reducing the main generator excitation in the event of the slipping or lock wheel. The wheel slip system does not recognize the wheel slip when the locomotive's unit is isolated when the throttle is in idle. Thus, the importance of looking back over your consists is if any unit is isolated dead in tow, the event of the wheel sets become locked. During the periods of light limit, light slips, and wheel creep, the wheel slip system acts automatically and applies sand reduced power to where the wheel will hold the rail and no wheel slip is detected. At any given speed, all the wheels on the locomotive unit are turning at the same speed and all the traction motors are drawn with the same current. Should the wheel slip, it causes the particular traction motor to draw less current than the other motors. The wheel slip relay picks up the wheel slip light shows on each of the unit. Because this, any time the wheel slips, the locomotive unit wheel is slipping on and will start the unloading of the stages until the wheel stops slipping. Then the wheel slip light will go out. The generator alternator will return to the normal load. Alright, you got a continuous wheel slip light. A wheel slip burning continuous intermittently with the throttle reduced for the idle may indicate the locked wheel with a bad bearing, not allowing the wheel to rotate freely. When the conditions exist, stop the make of the rolling inspection to determine if all the wheels are turning freely. If a pair of wheels are locked, sliding and trying to cut out with the traction motor for the pair of the wheels, they're trying to drive the locomotive unit to see if they can be freed. If the wheels can be freed from the move of the locomotive unit with the very slowly to set off the position. If the wheels cannot be freed, you may have to slide them into a point where the locomotive can be set out with a help device with the mechanical department before making this move. 31. Cutting out the traction motor on the account of the wheel slip trouble. If you observe the ammeter reading at nearly zero, the constant wheel slip light on and roll-by inspection must be made to determine that the wheels are turning freely. If the inspection reveals all the wheels are turning freely, the locomotive unit usually can be made to load and cutting out the traction motor of the pair of motors. Cutting out the traction motor eliminates the wheel slipping protection, therefore the wheel must be observed closely for the rotation. 32. Wheel slip action when the locomotive unit does not make the transition properly. On locomotive unit that make transition when a major step of the transition is made. When the light slip will usually flash, the locomotive unit will not make the forward step of the transition due to electrical problem. Usually will load up the transition speed, then will unload show a wheel slip. This will load again up to the transition point. The situation can usually be corrected by the cutting out of the traction motor of the pair of the motors when it's placed with the remaining motors in a parallel connection. Eliminates the wheel slip protection again, with the wheels must be observed closely for the rotation. Locked wheel protector. Many new locomotive units have been locked wheel protectors without the device operated independently with the wheel slip system. The device operates when the throttle is shut off, and it still operates with the locomotive unit with the traction motor cut out. Operation with the locomotive unit under power. When a locked wheel indication occurs on a locomotive unit, the alarm receives AR bell. All units are located with wheel light on the unit affected. The unit affected is also unloaded. Alright, stop and inspect. When a locked wheel indication is received and stopped by a roll-by inspection to determine if all the wheels are turning. If the wheels are locked, control of the mechanical department. Locking the locomotive unit will have to be set out with a consist of all the wheels are turning freely and a locked wheel light is still burning. Place the locked wheel switch in the reset or cutout position. Locked wheel light will continue to burn and the bell will stop running and the locomotive unit will show load. Notify the chief dispatcher and proceed. If everything else is normal, you still have a locked wheel protection through the wheel slip system. The PC switch trip. The PC switch function automatically drops into the PC relay with returning the diesel engine at idle speed under load to generate each of the locomotive unit that consists during a penalty emergency brake application. An alarm received with the PC light error of the engine control stand, the controlling locomotive. A note on former Conrail locomotives with the power knockout type 1. PC relay will not drop out of them if the emergency brake pipe is initiated. 36 to reset the PC switch and the PC relay. To reset the PC switch, the person has to regain the control of the brakes according with the instruction penalty of the emergency application for the PC relay. To reset the PCS light to go out throughout that must be replaced in the idle dynamic brake to the off position. If possible, to recover the brakes, have the PCS light remain when the brake recover the throttle that has been placed in advance and idle. 37 switches on the trailing locomotive units to ensure the proper operation for the PC switching during the penalty emergency brake of the application for the control of the fuel pump switch for the engine run switch must be in the cut-off position of all trailing locomotive units. 38. Throttle emergency stop position. The emergency stop position of the throttle of the multiple unit shutdown button when the wide body split of the locomotive with the desktop control will shut down the diesel engine down. All units in the consisting of providing isolation engine control switches in the running position. It to be used in case of emergency. Using the emergency throttle off the position with multiple unit shutdown button is not proper way to shut the engine down. It must be used only with emergency situation when it is desired to shut down all the engines consist at once when the engine of the locomotive unit has been shut down and the fashion the alarm received has no power light with the unit affected the belt with each of the unit with the consist of the turbocharged locomotive diesel locomotive unit. You will also receive the white turbo light pump light throttle position multiple unit shutdown button on the trailing locomotive unit. In the accident, otherwise the throttle of the trailing locomotive unit is placed in emergency stop position. It will have the same effect of the placing the throttle on the lead locomotive unit in the stop position, provided that the lead locomotive unit is in idle. If the lead locomotive unit is not in idle, the throttle and on all the train units is in the stop position. Erratic engine speed, RPM, and incorrect throttle response will be noticed at any time the throttle position is changed. 40. Just restart the engine. When isolation switches move the isolation position of the bell and no power light or extinguish, the engine cannot be restarted with the usual manner, and any throttle of any unit with a consistent stop still in the stop position. The engine will shut down as soon as the isolation switch is placed in the run position. This problem will often found on the outlying points when the engine has been shut down with the throttle of multiple unit shutdown button. Or your emergency fuel cutoff. The device is played from the locomotive units to enable any one of the unit combination to be shut down in emergency. 441 location. There are 3 emergency fuel cutoff locations on each of the locomotive unit with a fuel tank on one in the cab. On some of the GE units, there are additional fuel cutoffs at the start stations. 2 type on the Northfolk Southern locomotive units. They are spring-loaded with the push button type. The push button will shut down the engine as well. With the shut off the fuel pump, they do not have to be reset. The push button in the cab will be labeled emergency fuel cutoff, and the engine stop if the button is used without moving the isolation switch to isolate. A new power light along with the alarm will be sounded. There are 2 types of emergency fuel cutoff devices. One on the foreign locomotive units, they may have to be the pull ring type, the type that does not shut up the fuel pump. This type does not shut the fuel pump off. If it shuts the fuel supply off, the engine shuts down. The lack of fuel, the pull ring type has to be reset manually. 43. Locomotive units with the fuel sight glasses. Electric motor diesel units, locomotive units. 2 fuel oil sight glasses return bypass and mounted with the governor end of the diesel engine opposite lay shaft. The proper loading of the diesel engine, number one returning sight glass nearest the engine must be full of fuel and free of air bubbles. Exemption to this electronically fuel injected 2 engines. They must have some of the bubbles in the sight glass to do higher to fuel pressure that's normal to fuel oil showing the glasses returning to the tank with the also demand the diesel engine have been met. During the normal operation number 2 bypass sight glass farthest from the engine should be empty. The empty mounting of the fuel filters located below the sight glass become clogged. Pressure will build up forcing the fuel over into the number 2 sight glass. If the engine is starving for fuel is indicated by loss of power, missounding of the dropping of the amperage, you should check the number 1 fuel return sight glass once next to the diesel engine. If the sight glass has no fuel or only partial full, this will indicate the engine is starving for fuel. Due to no fuel in the tank, fuel pump not properly supplying the same. The most probable cause would be dirty fuel oil section filters. 45. The GE locomotive units, the fuel sight glass for the GE engine is located near the starting station and normally will have air bubbles in the glass. Defective jumper cable. Or your defective jumper cable can cause many problems with the locomotive. Consists usually a bad jumper cable can result with the trailing units not responding to the lead unit, such as the not speeding up, the not loading on the diesel engine shutdown. Generally, the trouble can be corrected by making sure the cable is secured in the receptacle or by changing the cables. 46. Engine will not start. The engine failing to start with a spill into the true charge. The engine will not rotate, and 2. The rotates will not fire. Engine 47. Engine will not rotate. The engine will not rotate. Indicate for the electrical problem. Check the following item for the electric motor diesel in the unit. The main battery switches must be loaded. The isolation switch must be in the isolation position. The control fuel pump must be in the on position of the lead locomotive unit. Control circuit breaker must be on. Local control circuit control breaker must be on. Engine starting fuse must be in good in place. The turbocharger locomotive, the turbo loop breaker must be on. The breaker is protected by a metal cover. On the G engine, the failure to push the fuel pump reset button will result in the engine not rotating. On the G locomotive, the governor shutdown holding relay must be reset before the engine can rotate. If an oil or water problem caused it to shut down. Alright, engine rotates but fails to start. The engine rotates but does not indicate that not receiving the fuel with a check with the following items. The fuel, the pump, brake of the breaker, protect for the fuel pump of the motor must be on. The fuel cyclist, one of the next for the engine should be filled full. It does not indicate if the fuel pump is not pumping fuel because it's not running with the fuel tank is empty. One of the fuel filters is plugged in the gate, which gate for the outside glass will be filled with the engine primed. Engine overspeed when the trip place for the fuel injectors, no fuel position on the electric motor diesel or the general electric locomotive units. The oil switch on the governor on which the electric motor diesel and the older GE locomotive unit. This prevents the injector from getting fuel. Engine does not respond to the throttle and does not load. Checking the following. The ground relay will usually trip when starting the DC locomotive unit. Module control circuit breaker. The PCS light brake must be properly recovered. The alternator failure isolation switch, which engine does not respond to the throttle loads lightly to be sure that the engine run switch up on control unit. Engine speeds up. Does not load. The indicated generator field is not excited. Checking the following. Reverse level of the generator field switch. 250 amp generator field switch is equipped. 49 and only loads in one direction. Checking the reverse control circuit breaker. Reversing controller breaker. If the breaker tripped, the engine will not reverse. It does not load after coming out of the dynamic braking. Checking the braking transition control breaker. If the breaker tripped, the will and brake the engine will not load in the power. If the brake tripped while in the power, the engine will not load in the braking. 51. The breaker to trip will shut down the diesel engine breaker. The control breaker, if the breaker trips, the control unit will also shut all the units down, and now can be restarted until reset. Load control breaker, the breaker trip, if the diesel engine shut down, that cannot be restarted until the reset. Fuel pump breaker, the engine will shut down with the lack of fuel, must be reset to start the engine. Auxiliary generator breaker and fuse. When the breaker trips, the fuel pump is shut off when the engine shuts down with the lack of fuel. When the engine starts, when the switch is placed in the primary position, fuel system is charged. The engine will restart with the breaker. The trip button will shut down again with the fuel in the system used. Auxiliary generator field breaker. The fuse. The same apply with the breaker and the fuse as the auxiliary generator breaker. Or reporting locomotive trouble on the form ME60. When reporting the malfunction on the locomotive unit, always give them as much information as possible. For instance, you can cut out the traction motor, tell you why to cut it out. If an engine is tripped, the ground relay put down and how often and what speed with throttle position. The more information you give the mechanical department, the better. When you furnish work form ME60, the forms are available with the mechanical department. They should be on the locomotive unit with the proper handling. Filling out these forms is part of your job, and filling out a time ticket to get yourself a supply and keep them with you. Our portable fire extinguisher. The type of the fire extinguisher used on like a locomotive. Dry chemical powder can toast the burning surface, smother the fire. All locomotive units are equipped with the two dry chemical fire extinguisher. Location fire extinguisher on locomotive. One will be the nose, short, and hood end of the floor of each unit. The other will be in the engine room, usually hanging on inside of the hood of the door that must be opened and start the engine. 52. How to use the extinguisher. Pull the pin holder and squeeze the handle together. This will let the chemical out of the extinguisher on a dry powder. Chemical extinguisher direct now to let the base for the flame. Now that the smoke upside use side-to-side motion will cover all the burning surface of the sweep nozzle from the one side of the flame and the other from the edge of the flame to rear. Try to stay low and out of the heat and smoke. Always leave yourself as an escape route. After using the extinguisher, on the locomotive inspection report form ME60, the extinguisher has been used. The person relieving it may need it. Always place the fire extinguisher back in the rack, provided never play the extinguisher on the point of the nozzle at anyone. Or troubleshooting diesel questions. When the engine overspeeds the trip of the locomotive, how do you reset it? What happens to the diesel engine, electric motor diesel for the government locomotive unit G, the locomotive unit except for the C39-8, C39-8-89? Will the engine start with the overspeed trip? With the what position engine control isolation switch for the start the engine? What alarms would receive if the engine overspeed trips? What diesel engine shuts down on the account of the low oil pressure? Alarms will receive the oil pressure, two safety devices, diesel engine cup, the low oil plunger for the governor, electric motor diesel when the unit of the trip with the AR. How many times will the crankcase tractor be reset on any locomotive unit? 8 on the electric motor diesel locomotive unit. How could you visually determine if the low water with the device electrical EPR has been tripped? On the EMD locomotive unit, if the high engine alarm goes off, what happens if the power operating the number 8 throttle position? If the engine runs out, what would you check? How do you tell what the breaker is tripped on the locomotive unit? How do you reset the breaker? What if the high voltage circuit of the locomotive unit consists of? What if the ground relay protect? What if the ground relay trips happen to the engine with a speed RPM load? What is ground relay trip the continuous? What action does it take if the locomotive unit is equipped with a traction motor cutout switch? What extraction limit relay trips on the locomotive unit? What happens to the engine speed RPM and the load? How do you reset the excitation limited relay? What is the G-9 does not start after shrinking about 25 seconds once must be checked. What are the fuses for the breakers that cause the alternator failure? What happens to wheel slip? The light show for the locomotive unit. What and the make continuous wheel slip light indication? What action would you take? Anytime the locomotive unit is operated with a traction motor cut out, what must be observed closely? What alarms are received when you get a locked wheel indication? Locomotive unit equipped with locked wheel protection. What actions would you take to receive locked wheel indication? With a PC switch strip, they had what action necessary to reset the PC switch PC relay? When engines start with the throttle emergency stop position, what happens if the isolation switch placed in the running position? With the emergency fuel cutoff switch located on the locomotive unit, with the fuel oil side glass must be fuel and the fury of the air bubbles of the engine able to perform properly. When starting the engine will not rotate with the start button is operated, but it should be checked. When starting the engine rotates will not be start. What should be checked? What are the fuses of the breakers? Will they shut down the engine if the blown a trip? How does the reset the electric motor diesel electric control panel on the EMD 7070 ST70? How to reset the electric motor diesel electric control panel system on the EMD Mac 80 locomotive? What type of the file extinguisher found in the locomotive unit? Why are they located on the locomotive unit? Notes, more note, the glossary, and we'll cut the tape here.